Hello again, everyone. I apologize for what happened with my video, my last video. I do not know what happened. I replayed it back. What happened was my camera went out. Get down. You're not getting another one. Get. Go lay down. She sees the video starting and Pavlovian response. She expects you know what. I'm not giving her two tonight. At any rate, the video was very short. I was doing an opening prayer and my camera shut off, but then the audio portion, at least from what I could see, there's a little sound recorder that shows that my voice is recording and the timer was still clicking. So I thought, okay, they can't see me, but at least they can hear me, and who cares? I'm nothing to look at anyway. But it didn't work. So if you do jump on, and please leave a comment, let me know that it's working. I have a little light on my computer that lets me know that the camera's working. So if the camera's working, I'm assuming I'm going. If the camera shuts off, I'm going to assume some glitch occurred. I'm not going to restate what I said at the other one, so I'm going to keep this short. It should absolutely be under 30 minutes unless I get engagement. Right now, no one's watching. Sadly, I had 3 people, which I think is close to a record. I've had 4 or 5 at one time, but 3, lately is a lot. Anyway, I've titled this, the challenge for a professing Christian in today's culture wars that we're having, especially around this issue of transgenderism. And the impetus for this video came about when I read a posting to Reddit on the Christianity thread. Someone had shared an article published to Newsweek magazine, which I have linked below, and you're welcome to read. I'm going to read the first few paragraphs. I'm not going to read the entire article. This was published on the 30th of April, so it's very current, April 30th, 2023. And it's about something that's occurred in the state of Montana. The title of the article is "Thousands of Christians Condemn GOP's Fascist Silencing of Trans Lawmaker." If you're Canadian or elsewhere in the world and wonder what GOP means, it stands for Grand Old Party, and it's references the Republican Party. Anyway, here's what it says. Over 10,000 Christians signed a petition that condemned the banning of Representative Zoe Zephyr, a Montana Democrat and the state's first transgender lawmaker, from the state's House floor on Wednesday after she reportedly breached decorum. Zephyr spoke last week against Bill 99, which was recently signed by Montana Governor Greg Gianforte, banning gender-affirming care for minors. The legislation, which will go into effect on October 1, states that healthcare professionals who violate the gender-affirming ban are, quote, subject to discipline by the appropriate licensing entity or disciplinary review board, end of quote. Consequences will include a suspension from their medical practice for at least a year. From boycotting Bud Light for allowing transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney to promote the beer brand's product, to banning transgender people from participating in women's sports, transgender rights have been heavily targeted by conservatives and Republican-led states. Over 385 anti-trans bills were introduced in the United States this year alone, with some lawmakers calling for either limiting or banning access to gender-affirming care for children and access to public restrooms. On the House floor, Zephyr said that forcing a transgender child to go through puberty would be tantamount to torture, and this body should be ashamed. Quote, she, he, they, whatever. If you vote yes on this bill, I hope the next time you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands, Zephyr said. In response, Republican House Speaker Matt Reiser deemed her statements as a breach of decorum. As a result, she was barred from the House floor in a 68-32 vote, meaning that she will not be allowed to debate or speak on legislation for the remainder of session, which ends next week. The state representative will cast her vote remotely until then. That's as much as I'm going to read. And it looks like my video is still working, although, hey, there's someone watching. I would appreciate just a little hi or something in the comment just to let me know things are working. And my dog's got a toy, so now I have to put up with noise. Drop it, Candy. Anyway, so that led me to write a post on my Facebook timeline. I read that early this evening. I got home from work today. I'd worked a 9-hour shift and read that, and especially the fact that 10,000 professing Christians or individual Christians had condemned what had happened and speaking out in favor of transgender ideology. It bothered me. And I went to take a nap, hence why I'm up so late. It's 1:49 now on May 2nd. And then when I woke, I shared my thoughts. And I'm just scrolling down to where I wrote what I wrote. And here it is. I titled this, "I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." And I subtitled it, "The Challenge of Proclaiming a Biblically Sound Doctrine in Today's World." Just give me a sec. My dog's got something that's noise is driving me nuts. Sorry about that. It's a piece of plastic. Border Collies are chewers. Still good. G'day, mate. Simp, I've got two. So I'm Kieran. G'day, mate. You got to be from down under. And Simp P. Appreciate it. Here, I'm going to start again with what I wrote on my Facebook timeline. So I titled it again, "I have not come to bring peace but a sword, and the challenge of proclaiming a biblically sound doctrine in today's world." That quote, "I have not come to bring peace but a sword," is from Luke's Gospel. It's in chapter 10, second part of verse 34. And Jesus is speaking of the division those who follow him should expect. Jesus states that he has come to set family and household members against one another. And over what? Over following Christ. In John 4:16, we're presented with these words of Jesus. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And I'm stressing the word the truth because today's world is full of lies. And anyone holding fast to biblical truth and authority, we're being persecuted and in some cases even prosecuted for holding fast to that which is true. Now, there's a prevailing narrative being foisted on the population, which basically portrays Christians who maintain a biblical worldview as being hateful, ignorant, we're knuckle-dragging troglodytes who deny science. And yes, I said hateful. Christians are defined by the culture. We're thought of as hateful. And why hateful? Because Christians who maintain and proclaim biblical teaching and speak out against gender ideology and this agenda that's being forced on us, especially kids, are said to be inflicting pain and misery on those who affirm a gender identity that is divorced from biological objective reality. You saw the comments of that legislator in Montana. Shame on you. Interestingly, Christians are not the only people of faith opposed to transgender ideology. Muslims are also opposed to it. And you can go online, you can just type Islam's view on transgenderism, and you'll find out there are all kind of fatwas, which are religious proclamations by imams and Islamic councils, and they speak out against affirming they speak out and they affirm the truth that humanity is created male and female, not an endless number of permutations. And when I was doing my searching, I also came across a forum for members of the Sikh faith, although the proper way to pronounce Sikh is actually Sikh. That's the way it's pronounced in Punjabi, their language. But we don't say sick because that means ill in our language. But point of fact, it's the Sikh faith. And this forum I looked at, there were individuals who are members of the Sikh community who profess a transgender identity, and they report being hated on and even having met with violence. But if you go and you're not allowed to hate, you're not allowed to cast aspersion on members of the Islamic faith or the Sikh faith, because if you do, then you're going to be called intolerant and maybe even racist. So instead, Christians get attacked. And as always, this is one of those topics where you can go off in a dozen or more different directions. But one of those directions is to talk about this false battle between faith and science. Now, did transgenderism exist back in biblical times? And personally, I think a better term than transgenderism is gender confusion. But regardless, did it exist back 2,000 years ago? Sure, I'm positive. I'm positive 2,000 years ago that there were boys who believed that they were born in the wrong bodies, and there were girls likewise thought, this is a mistake. The only difference is that thousands of years ago, we didn't have a pharmaceutical industry that had learned enough about God's ultimate creation to pervert and alter things with drugs like puberty blockers. There were no surgical procedures which could mutilate bodies to bring an individual's anatomy more in line with their confused identity issues. Science has brought us understanding about what happens to young men and women as we enter our adolescent years. And it's also given us the ability to mess around with the fabric of reality in order to bring reality into accordance with an individual's subjective feelings. But just because we have the ability to do something doesn't mean it's ethical to do it. Now, getting back to the reason why Christians, but not Muslims or Sikhs, are hated for opposing transgender ideology, it's because Pandora's box has been opened thanks to science. And this Pandora's box, which opens up all manner of possibilities for individuals to sate their every whim and desire, how dare Christians try and close that box? It gets us back to the story of creation, the creation story within Genesis, where Eve is presented with the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Hey, we can decide for ourselves what constitutes reality. And God is an oppressor denying us that right. And that's how it's framed. It's a human rights issue. The right of the individual to do whatever they see as right in their own eyes, to satisfy their needs and desires, those needs and desires of today, and totally disregard any future ramifications, both individual ramifications and ramifications for our society and culture as a whole. And many who outwardly profess the Christian faith are willing to warp biblical teaching in order to affirm this never-ending LGBTQ, etc. acronym. There are institutions that call themselves churches, which proclaim the gospel of, hey, do whatever you feel. In my country, we have the United Church of Canada, and it's one which basically it promotes the perversion of God's rainbow, rebels against the symbolic meaning of that atmospheric wonder that we're presented with in the Bible. And why? Why would any professing Christian, why would they acknowledge transgenderism? I will submit that it's because they want to be thought well of by the broader secular community. They don't want to invite derision from the woke mob, which I equate to being a brainless throng that is being spurred on by an atheistic media and our government institutions. But here's what they'll say. They'll say, it damages our witness. That's one argument I have heard from those who profess this go along to get along approach to the ever-shifting sand that our world has become. Well, as a Christian, if your primary concern is placating a horde of people who are openly hostile to God's offer of eternal salvation, who think that life is simply the result of a series of random accidents, if you're going to bow down to those who follow that ideology, then that means you're going to abandon the truth. So I'll wrap things up with a defense of the creationist view. This view that is presented in the mainstream, it's ignorant, uninformed, unscientific. In today's world, if you point to the beauty, the precision, the wonder of a creature like a hummingbird, the secular humanist will tell you, oh, well, that's just the result of a series of random accidents. A praying mantis, just another random accident. A gazelle, giraffe, orchid, a redwood, starfish, seahorse, a blue whale, millions upon millions upon millions of just random accidents are all just the result of random accidents. Oh, and all these random accidents that they're able to coexist in a wonderful ecosystem. How is that? Just another random accident. And that boy who thinks he's a girl, that was just an accident too. And thanks to science, we can fix it. That's the world we've devolved into. Simpy is saying transgender is not an ideology. Transgender are a people. We have documented them being amongst us for thousands of years. And I agree. As I said, this idea of gender confusion is not new. What's new is the ability to halt a natural human development through the use of puberty blockers and through the use of mutilating surgeries to remove mastectomies, and I don't know what you call the version where a male has his genitalia removed, and so advances in surgical techniques and medical science have allowed us to mess around with things. So Simpy is saying not an ideology. The only mistake is excluding them, making laws that oppress them, and committing violence against them. I will absolutely agree with committing violence against them. No one should have violence committed against them. However, I will say this. What about women's rights? And I'm talking about biological women. The right of a woman to feel safe in a change room. What about her feelings about vulnerability if being asked to share a communal shower with an individual who has a penis and testicles? Is she TERF because she does not, she's not advocating violence, not advocating hatred, just advocating for her own safety? Another subjective, someone can feel threatened by the presence of a biological male in an environment like a change room or a washroom. Brian Anthony Gear. Maybe they just want to love people like Christ told them to. I'm gonna wrap this up with a quote from Scripture. I absolutely agree. We're not to hate someone. There's the former head of pediatric medicine for the United States spoke out a while ago with respect to transgenderism, especially as it concerns children. And she cited a specific example where there was a family and there was a boy and a girl, and the girl was special needs. She was developmentally challenged, and she was the younger child, and she had an older, still very young brother. And the parents, because of the girl's special needs, they were forced to give her a lot of attention. And children crave attention from their parents. They want affirmation, they want love. And this boy saw his sister getting all this attention. And in his child's mind, he equated the reason they were pouring so much love and attention on his sister. He didn't understand the special needs aspect. He thought it was because she's a girl. And if I was a girl, in his mind, then mommy and daddy would love me and I would get the same attention she gets. And in today's world, that child would go to school and the teachers would be disciplined if they didn't affirm that child's confusion. And this is an incredible, just as I said in my post on Facebook, just because we have the ability to stop an individual, a child, from going through puberty does not make it an ethical, a right, and certainly not a Christian thing to do. And then Kieran is writing, I don't hurt people without cause, but I feel I need to wake the world up, but I don't care that much. I'm going to speak about that as well a bit with the closing passage that I'm going to read from the book of Matthew. I love old school, simple thinking. Maybe the Amish have it right. That's Kieran, and who I'm assuming is Australian because he says "Good day, mate." And I apologize for my crappy Australian down under accent. But in the book of Jonah, the king of Nineveh gets off his throne and recognizes that God is God. There's a theme there. We need to get off our throne. Just because we can do something doesn't mean it is the right thing to do. We are seeing the destruction of the family unit in today's world. And the family unit, it's never been perfect, but we're heading down a road that is going to, and honestly, I don't think there's any stopping it. They're pushing this Agenda 2030, these sustainable development goals, this great reset is at war with Christianity, not with Islam, not with Hinduism, not with Sikhism, which is the proper way to pronounce Sikhism for members of the Sikh faith. I got off on a tangent and I forgot where I was going. Happens when you get old, which I am. But it's Christian. It's the Christian faith that is under attack because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And central to that, and I'll stress it again, the truth. You're presented with biological reality, the fabric of creation. And If you read through the Old Testaments, and they're constantly, men did what was right in their own eyes. We don't like the fabric of reality. We don't like the notion of sacrifice. Sacrifice in the Old Testament is often presented as a bull offering, a grain offering, a peace offering, a this offering, a that offering, sacrificed unto the Lord, burned, incense burned on an altar, all these things. Sacrifice has another meaning. It means giving up for today to get a benefit tomorrow. And we don't like that. That goes against our human nature. Our human nature is to satisfy our every whim and desire in the here and now. And our timeline is too short. Sometimes we can't see beyond the day. I can give a great example. When I was about 4 or 5 years